One more project. One more project. Dan here, DD Speed Shop. I think today we're gonna make this thing a roller. At least that's what I hope we're gonna do. So this is our Healey El Cheapo kit car, which we're gonna bag on. Now, what I've been doing, I've been waiting a little bit on some suspension parts and some axles and stuff like that. Spoiler alert, I think what the plan is today, I'd like to just put the rear end in proper, put the wheels on, have it sit on the ground how it's supposed to. I want to rearrange the garage. I actually think I want to bring the Opel in. I think these little cars, now that this thing is somewhat assembled, we have two in here, and put them on rollers. And let's add another project to the mix. This one is going to be, I don't want to say back burner, but once it's all together and the motor and all that's in, I mean, really it's going to be trimming and cutting the body and doing bits and pieces here and there to see what I like. And I'd like to let it sit and age a little bit as I come up with ideas and go from there. Also, it's like December. We have lots of time before we have to drive this thing. Now, my thought process is, and I've seen this on lots of cars, kit cars, hot rods, let's set the rear end, the body and all that first, and then we'll kind of deal with the front. The way this body, I have it currently clamped onto the frame, it's right in line with this little girder here, which is what the instructions say. We have a couple of bolts right centered through where the bumper would be, bumperettes, and it's right into the frame. So this, in theory, should be squared up pretty good and at the height that it's going to want to be. Now, what we're going to do, the original kit came with a bunch of stuff for the rear suspension. This thing was built in 1990 or 1991. Anyways, the company went out of business and defunct. The guy who originally bought this thing never got the rear suspension. So we're gonna make it. Now, I've never done that before, but it should be easy. How hard can it be? Step one, so the rear end is currently kind of welded in place just with some angle iron, which may not change in the immediate future, but there's no link bars, nothing to it. Now, what I was doing, or was waiting on, was these axles. So this is a 4 to 8 inch, which came with it, much like the front end, which was all Pinto stuff, and it was originally drilled 4-lug. Hot rod can't have 4-lug. So we upgraded the front brakes to 5-lug Chevy, and I had the rear end, or the rear axles drilled out. So my good buddy, the Penny boys at Penny's Speed and Custom, I think, or Custom and Hot Rods, I don't know. They're on YouTube, they're great, they're local. The one guy's a machinist, and I don't know what he must have welded up some stuff, and now it is Chevy 5 on 4 3/4. So, thanks Penny boys, appreciate the hell out of that. So, we're gonna slide this in. Now being a Ford, slide in, they're bolt-in axles. It'll probably need some bearings and stuff, but you know what, for right now, we'll jam her in there. We'll then bolt on these wheels I have. These are the ones, are they on camera? Oh yeah. So these are American Racing Daisies. I think this is what I want to go. At the very least, I think these are 15 by 7 with like 3.5 inch back spacing and a 275/60 tire, which that combination of tires all I own. So whatever fits on here, whether it's a steel wheel or a slick or a Krager, it should all in theory fit the same. So the body is not going to move. We're going to put the axles in, bolt the wheels on. We're then going to set the ride height by welding the rear end in solid with these bars where I want it to sit at ride height with, like, you know, load on it. Now, what's going to come down the road is coilovers, and I got to do the math there, but we have to get the rear end to articulate. So I had bought a universal kit off eBay, so you know it's good. And essentially, it came with a bunch of bars and some tabs. Now I've never done this before, but we're gonna go ahead and run some bars from the frame to the rear end, put in some heims, and work our way there. Now, it's gonna be a triangulated 4-link, I think, because that's what this thing is set up for. So the chassis itself has all the mounting hardware for a triangulated 4-link meant for this rear end-ish. So we're going to go ahead and do that. The The tabs I got aren't exactly perfect. I'm doing a lot of research on how to set up a 4-link, and the lower link I think you want to be somewhat parallel. It may be up just a hair, in which case we'll have to get some of these that are maybe longer with more bolts in them. But the upper should be good, and we'll go ahead and see what works. There's a lot of looking. You can do your anti-squat line and your instant center and all sorts of stuff about rear suspension, which I honestly don't know anything about. And if you're in a race car and all those things, so be it. What we're trying to accomplish here is avoid wheel hop when we dump the clutch at 6,000 RPM in second gear and do donuts and burnouts. So as long as it'll do that, oh, and go straight. Tracking straight's always nice too. Yeah, so let's slam these axles in. We'll get the rear end where we think we want to have it, and we'll start sizing some of this stuff up. I borrowed my old man's chop saw. He doesn't know, but thanks for that, Mer. Appreciate it. I'll make sure I'll give it back to you. It's mine now. Ever so slight change of plans. I've pulled the rear end out, mostly because it was held in by 2 little tack bolts. Now, what we have to do is we have to cut off these. This was originally like a leaf spring car. So you have to cut off the leaf spring purchase, which one side looks it's already done or broke off. Cut one side off. The other thing is, at that point, I'd like to just kind of wire wheel it a little bit, get the mating surface for the center section cleaned. I don't have any of these bolts, which I'm believing or nuts and shit, are probably 3/8 fine. I like to put the center section in, we'll silicone it in, plunk it in there, secure it. We can then jam the axles in, bolt them in with 4 bolts, and then we'll have a complete center section, or rear end I should say. I do have brakes for it somewhere, which all these things probably just gonna be backing plates. We'll have to buy everything else. And then, because sorry, I'm getting all over the place, but the mounts are gonna have to be welded on here, the 4-link mounts, and probably somewhere up in here. So that I wanna kind of get that down to bare metal, and around, you know, the axle tubes from here over will be nice clean. Up here will be nice clean. We'll wire wheel the rest, put it all together, and then at that point, we can get in the car, tack it, and then paint it or do whatever we gotta do from there. Or this might be a fiasco. Who knows what's even gonna work out, but I am rather confident. I mean, how hard can it be? So let's cut these mounts off real quick here. Well, the nice thing with these red things, that's what's going to hold it in, and it centers the diff, because I already did that math. Okay, so we're slightly in the future. I went out and got some fine thread rip-off hardware. We have the center section here. I did the math. It's got 32 teeth on the ring gear and 9, or whatever it is, pinion, I guess. So that gives me a 355 ratio, which isn't too bad. It is an open rear end, so it either needs a posi unit or a little weld job down the road, but for now, you know what? It's actually not too bad. So I think people say they're 28 spline axles maybe. So I mean, it's got, for what it is, will be good. So all we're gonna do now is we're gonna go ahead and gasket make this, because while it was out, I thought, oh, I should get a gasket for this, but I didn't. So do that, put it together, slam the center section in, and then we'll come back and we'll do axles, which is, again, very simple. Then we'll have ourselves like a, I'm not gonna say rebuilt, because I've done nothing, but reconditioned 4 to 8 inch. We're hot rodders. Well, so disclaimer, I've never done this before, but how hard can it be, right? So, man, this little table here is, I don't know what's weight rated for, but it's doing awesome. So, I'm going to give you just a quick little, here's where we're at. So we got the body on, we're doing not too bad, so just kind of the shoulder, the tire sticks out again. This is actually not quite on, that's fine. We have a fairly consistent gap the whole way around. Nothing's getting welded, I'm just eyeballing right now. Bear with me. Same thing, tires got about the same amount of tuck. Actually, it's gonna work out really well. About roughly the same amount of space. Now we are a little bit out to lunch. The rear is slightly cocked, but that's no big deal. Right now we're in the ballpark, so I have an idea of where everything's going to sit, because again, this whole rear end is going to be adjustable with heims and coilovers, so nothing is permanent, well, within reason. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the wheels off. We're going to use the tape measure. The rear end is obviously squared up side to side. That's what those red poles did a while ago, and as you can tell, I mean, the body's not perfect, but the rear end's pretty much centered in the car and the wheel wells. That's fine. So now what we got to do is decide the yaw, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. So we'll put a tape, you know, from the axle tube or the flange or something forward, some known area, make sure those match. And once we get that, all we have to do is kind of get the pitch of the pinion close-ish. But again, that's all going to be adjustable. The nice thing about the four-way adjustable rear end is obviously the upper bars. So if we, for instance, lengthen the upper bars and pull the lower bars in, that'll tilt the rear end up or down or whatever we got to do. So there's a fair bit of adjustment. So we're just going to get it close-ish. And again, everything's just getting tackled together. Nothing's going to be permanent for now. But, so I'm going to pull the tape out. We'll square this thing up. I'm then going to weld in these red bars to the frame, wherever they're. They're all crooked and bent. But how they're welded, that'll keep the rear end planted where we want it, and then I can start making my 4-link bracketry, and essentially it's just going to be, you know, held to the rear end, which is a fixed thing. So it'll be a solid rear suspension. But then once we have that all dialed in the future, not right away, we'll replace those red support bars essentially with coilovers. That's how the suspension will work, I'm thinking. Now, if you're a chassis guy or a rear end guy or done this before, feel free to leave me an email or a comment below, because I'm just learning and I'm just kind of winging it, and nothing's permanent. That's the best part about this. It's all just kind of going together, and hopefully we're all learning together. I've never done this before, no idea what I'm doing, but as long as it doesn't chuck the rear end out of the thing while we're doing a burnout, it's a win. Honestly, I think everything went pretty well, so I'll just show you. Now we're going to go ahead and go off this little box piece, and right to the very front bolt, we're 13¼ to the front of the stud, that way. And from this perch to the face, we're 11 inches. So 13¼ and 11 inches. Remember that. Now, I'm going to switch hands. Gentle, gentle. This is, whoops. 13⅛, so we'll knock it just back a little, and here to here, man, right on 11. So we got an 1/8. It's got this side of the axle's got to go back an 1/8, which honestly could probably just be taken care of in the adjustment, but you know what, we'll get as close as we can. The next thing, we got our digital angle finder. So we got a 1/2 degree slope up on the chassis, which is actually pretty flat. And then on the center here, we got 1.5 degrees. So there's 1 degree of angle in the rear end, which is probably not a bad starting point. I mean, you don't want too much in it. I might put another degree in it just to be safe. So maybe we'll go up 1 more degree, a quarter or whatever I said, or an eighth. And this thing is where it's going to be. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to weld in those bars. So the thing will be locked into place. Double check the tires one last time, make sure I'm happy with the fitment. And we're dialed. Well, then we got to build a whole rear suspension. But honestly, it's going pretty well. One more thing I came to, and I kind of had it right. I don't think I talked about it, was I wanted to make sure the rear end was not tilty that way. So we have everything was fine, 13 1/4 to the front bolt. We have 3 degrees of pinion angle in it. Oh, and this is, so we got the chassis. I'm touching it, the frame's like, 2.2 of a degree. The rear end is 0.19. So I'd say that's in there straight, or not crooked, or not whatever it is that way. We have the correct ride height welded in and the right pinion angle. So I'm gonna leave it for a minute, go in, watch a little TV, kind of chill out, make sure nothing pops in my head here that's wrong. Looks right. What throws me off is these bars, like they're at different angles, which is irrelevant because it's just attaching the frame to the rear end, so who cares how they're welded. The rear end, I believe, is in the right spot. So we should be doing okay. I'm gonna put the wheels on, take a look at it one more time. And then after I take a break, a little after supper, we'll start running some bars, which again should be fairly straightforward. I mean, at this point, the only thing we run into, the heims are quite narrow, and the box that's meant to fit in is supposed to be for like a bushing kind of factory stamp steel control arm. So I have a bunch of washers to center it, and then once we get that all done, then I'll have to get like some pipe or billet or whatever, some fancy thing, cut to the right length, centered, so it'll have the heim centered inside the mount. But yeah, I don't know. If anyone has anything to say, stand up or forever hold your peace. Back at her. I thought about a bunch. I don't think I'm changing anything. So it's a little low just because we're not centered in the lugs, but we're talking 1/4 inch. But the same gap is the whole way around on both sides. Looks good. Now, originally I had a concern about, oh that's heavy, how the lower arm, like it looks almost like the rear end is higher than the mount, but when you have the bracket on, it's pretty much parallel. And at the end of the day, this rear end is supposed to be in this car with those tabs. So even if I have lowered the car by raising the rear end up, it'll just be in that bit of travel on the suspension that would have been anyways, because all those tabs are in the factory location. So that's simple enough. The only other thing I have to deal with, the rear end, the center section is slightly offset, and in the kit, like the kit for the kit car, it has the one ear, so that the mount goes right there to the center section, but on this side it has like a little piece that sits a little kind of off and up and over, so the bars remain the same size because the pumpkin's off. So that's the only one we'll have to do some probably screwing around with. Again, we're just using a universal kit, but I think I'll start with the lowers, measure those up, get them tacked on. Here's the bar we're going to use. Very simple stuff. It does have a seam in it, unfortunately, it's a pain. Bowimmer's chop saw for a nice straight cut. I beveled the edge, and well, here are the heims. We have 5 right hands and 5 left hands. This should just kind of, I'll smack it in the hammer, but basically that'll go flush. We'll weld that in, and that's what's going to make our bar. Now what I'm going to do is probably smack that in on the one side, give it a tack. We'll back this out halfway so it's in the middle of its adjustment, and then start doing some math and figuring out exactly where we want it to be on the rear end. So let's pull the wheels and let's start doing that. In all reality, the upper bars and lower bars should match each other and be in roughly, just the same location. So we're just making this 2 bars times 2. So hopefully we don't make them both wrong. I did my first bar on my own because I didn't know what I was doing. Now I actually think it came out pretty dang on good. So we started off with these rear brackets. So again, this is meant to be a parallel 4-link. So you'd bolt it on, you'd have top link and bottom link straight, and then you'd have a panhard bar, whatever goes side to side. So we're basically just using the bottom half of that, but we welded her up. Now, this is at an angle over, so I did have to kind of elongate or round out one of these, so essentially it kind of does that. Obviously we're tilted, but we're still somewhat square. This was 0 degree angle straight up and down, pretty much, or like 1 degree, it's pretty darn close. This is the issue, we have a pile of, again, washers there. This is just loose, so it's got a little bit of play, but the idea is there. We'll need some bushings or whatever we gotta do there. This is just for kind of show. I tightened that top and bottom when I was welding it, just so it had something there. And yeah, that's kind of that. So I think what I'm gonna do is give those a quick tack weld, make sure that's all locked together. When I did the, what's it called? The heims, I backed them all the way out, and then I put them in kind of halfway, and then I split that. So that way at the very most extension I kind of want it out, I figured would be, you know, you don't want more than half the threads out of this. In my mind anyways, maybe you can do more than that, but I thought that was proper. And in all reality, I shouldn't have to change these very much, and if I do, well then I'll cut them out and rebuild them. What are you gonna do? So that's that. I think we'll get the other side together. I'll probably just kind of show you how I'm gonna make it. I made the front of it, I hung it, you know, gave it a quick measurement. We should get, you know, eyeball it, and we'll kind of go from there. Now that I have this one where it is, I just made sure this eyeball or eyelet was straight, you know, straight into that. That one's straight. I don't know. There's probably some science to it, but I pulled a tape measure out and that's what it's gonna be. I'm happy with it. So let's go. Oh, and it's dang on almost level. So at ride height. So that's probably pretty good, eh? At ride height, that way you can go up and down and do its little articulation. So let's get the other one cut up. I'm excited. Actually, it went pretty well. So I jumped ahead. I made the other lower one. I wanted to make sure that wheel would fit, which it does. So I thought what I would do is maybe we'll build the top ones together. I feel like I'm pretty confident in this. I think it'll work out. My issue is I've run out of washers. I bought 2 packs, thinking that'd be lots, but I misjudged the width of these. So I started stealing like little brackets and stuff that came with the kit, which is kind of relevant. I mean, this isn't gonna go anywhere. I could probably start sealing the washers from that, but I don't really want to. Anyway, so I've drilled out the top holes because they're bigger, and I think I'll set the camera up and we'll build a bar. Now, pretty rudimentary the way I'm gonna do this. I have a hoist is handy. So I'm going to essentially build the front part of the bar. This is actually the offcut of these bottoms, so I'm gonna have lots of material left. And that's gonna put the bar somewhere like that. It'll be too long, but I'll be able to kind of eyeball where I wanna put my tabs on this side. I feel like this is gonna be the easy side, because I'm gonna be able to weld to one side of the kind of the pumpkin, and then, you know, right at the axle housing flange or whatever, and go from there. The kit came with a couple of different of these. So my thought process is I'll probably use that one and trim them down, and then carry on. Now, once we've made one that works, don't forget it's under there, buddy. One that works, we'll just replicate this bar to the exact same specifications, hang it in there. As you can see, it's gonna have to mount a little bit differently, which isn't the end of the world. We'll have to make a tab, and it'll all be centered. Wow, this is super handy in this car. Hoist. So yeah, we'll be able to do that, and I mean, tack it all together. Should be fine. If only I had coilovers. Oh well, they're on the list. Okay, so we have our bar. This is the piece I had cut, so we're gonna start by Kind of getting the inside cleaned up a little bit. Deburred a little. Now we have to get in there with the sander, because there's a little weld mark or whatever it is when the piece was made. We'll give that a quick once over. Okay, now that we got the center cleaned up, I'm going to give the edge a bevel, just because we're welding it. It's nice to have a little bevel there, get maximum penetration. So we'll give that a quick once over. So now we have that. We're going to take our one end, and I'm just doing it this, I don't know if it makes any difference. We need a right-hand thread and a left-hand thread, front and back, so as you turn the center of the pipe once all weld together, it'll expand or contract. So that's that. I always just start, oh, did I not go all the way? With the right side, just because, and I put the left side on the back. So we'll get this set up in the car with a couple of spacers, and I'll show you the next step. Okay, so we've got our bar in place. I just got some 1-inch square that I cut down just a little bit, which gives me, I mean, it's a little bit of flex, but it's pretty close. Now, what I want to do, or what I've been doing, is these heims have all sorts of movement in them. I feel like you want them to be as straight as you can. So I line that pipe up as straight as I can. This is kind of hard to do with one hand, but I'm going to end up putting this tab in line. So this pipe's going to want to do something like that. That's pretty much straight. Now essentially I just have to put this tab in line, you know, probably level it out. So it'll be right in line. Actually, it looks pretty much in line on camera there. With the, you know, it'll be kind of like those tabs again, but slightly narrower. So I'm going to weld the first one on. That'll get me an idea of where I'm going to be. I can then trim this pipe down and do the same thing. So it's going to be a very short piece. You got to think, if this is going here, I mean, it'll be, you know, cut it right there about, you know, 4 or 5 inches. And then we'll be able to kind of mock up the other one, which we'll use a long one and trim it to fit. We'll be probably welding on this axle tube. And then we'll simply recreate this and figure out on the other side. So that's what I'm going to do real quick. I'm going to just tack that in and I'll show you the next step, but I need both hands. You guys are always in the way. So we got one ugly tack weld holding it. But as you can see, we're pretty much right in the ballpark. This is somewhat centered. We should be okay. Now again, the pipe's just a little bit narrower than this, or the heim I should say. It's just slightly narrower than the pipe. We're gonna go ahead and do that. We're gonna mark where the center hole is, and then we'll obviously just have to transfer that over, slice it and dice it, and put all that together. So let's go over to the workbench and cut it down. Make it into a proper sized upper link bar, whatever you want to call it. So that's our little bar in there. Now what I did is I took the long piece, and instead of trying to cut it and do whatever and make it fit, I oblonged the bottom, just kind of with the grinder, so it kind of fit to the rear end. I figured that's the biggest footprint, the most amount of surface area to weld. Seems like a win. Now it's kind of, we're going to have to bolt these together so it's tight. Pretty straight though, as far as I'm concerned. And buzz them in. So I'm going to trim this off, round it, make it look nice. Then, like I said, we're going to nut and bolt this when you're welding, like two pieces like this. Because if you weld it, it'll want to pull the tab one way or the other. So we can get it welded or get it bolted, and then we can weld it and keep kind of giving her. Unfortunately, a lot of the hardware I have is too long and it's kind of goofy. It's not the best design stuff I've ever seen. And honestly, this tab here is in a different spot than this tab there. But you know what? That's how it was done, so I'm going to leave it. Also, it's kind of funny, it's just welded on the one side, and at the back here, is it triangulated? Oh, it is. I thought it wasn't. But yeah, so we'll trim that, we'll come back, and we'll dye it all together. And then build one more, carry on. It's getting kind of late though, I'm running out of steam, so it might be a job for tomorrow. The sciencing I've been doing is, I haven't thought this hard since I failed like grade 12 physics. Anyways, here's where we're at. Man. So I made another bar. This bar here was actually the original one from over there. So that's a new one. So this one we didn't change, so we know the distance is the exact same. That one we just made fit the tabs. So that's dialed. Now, obviously we only have one bracket on there, but you can clearly see the difference. Also, I forgot how to weld there. I don't know what happened, but it's better over here. Anywho, so we had to make, essentially, because the pumpkin is offset, but we had to make this bracket in the same angle. So I'll show you the angle in a second, but here's what I did. The diff is level. You see the little bubble there? So then I took the bigger level and I put it across the upper links until it was level, all while modifying this bracket or tab that I made. And then once we were level, I zung her in there. At the same time as making sure that everything is straight and happy in the tabs, right? So there we go. That's essentially in. Now I think that's what I'm gonna leave it for tonight. There's a bunch of welding to do. I need different hardware, shorter bolts, lock nuts, all that. There's a lot of welding to be done, and it's about midnight. So if I give her for another half hour to do all that welding, I hate welding and then going to bed. I'm not going to sleep. But at least this way, I can clean up a little bit. Nothing's going to set fire. I'm confident in it. Everything is golden. And then we got to get spacers, stuff like that. And I got to make one more tab. Unfortunately, the kit came with a bunch of these. I don't know what this is for, but it's not quite tall enough. So I'll have to make something or weld something together, or I don't know what. We'll figure something out tomorrow, but a list of hardware, all that, and a bunch of welding. I don't know. It's in there. I mean, if I didn't build it and I saw it on a car, I'd be like, yeah, I guess that's what they did. So hopefully that'll work out. Definitely we're gonna have to get another set of these for the coilovers down the road at some point, but now I can kind of shunk that off. These, I just put that in there. This can all come out. I don't know what I should do here, if I should leave them on. I put the wheel on, it doesn't interfere with anything, but yeah, we'll see. Weld that on solid. We should have ourselves a pretty slick little setup, I think. I'm going to bed. Hopefully I've done nothing wrong. You guys aren't furiously typing in the comments, because that would be, well, that would suck, because they'll be like a week after this video comes out, they'll be like, oh, I did it all wrong. In the meantime, we'll make it a roller tomorrow. Okay, it's the next day. I've actually been doing a little bit of work. Just got home from work not too long ago. Under here, so I ended up making this bracket, and I ended up using thicker on one side. A, that's what I had, and I was too lazy to go out and get anything. But B, many years ago, talk in the trunk here, I had a Pro Street Le Mans, had a ladder bar set up. I didn't install it, and it broke once or twice. I think I fixed it I think I fixed it twice for sure. And one time the the connections to the rear end, it twisted when you're bagging on it. And we're talking like 18-inch tires on it and everything. I mean, it was a race car. But, and I don't know if that was a geometry thing, or maybe it wasn't right, it was bending or doing some stuff. It was definitely done on the cheap and kind of poorly done. But that's stuck with me, and I've never installed this. So I thought I'll do a little overkill at the same time. So I also decided to put a plate on the back of those. So now it's three-way. I've also done this. I have to finish welding and then plate the back. So that should be all fine. I may have to do a little trimming on the front here. Ugh. Just because as the suspension comes down, it may run into that. So I may have to just kind of, grind that out a little, but really it should be fine. So we're gonna go ahead and weld the crap out of these. And then we'll weld up these arms we've made. Then I do have some different bolts. I picked some of those up. So we'll run some new bolts. I just got a bunch of washers. We'll have to get some sort of spacers made up or bought or whatever, cut them up. But for now, we'll get it all together so it's done. Trim off these red pieces, maybe give this a bit better of a weld because it's pretty ugly. And we'll go from there. But realistically, I think we're pretty much dialed. So set the camera up and do a pile of glue gun. Well, a pile of welding later. We got this thing all situated. I then gave it a quick coat of flat black paint, trimmed off the posts. I'm pretty happy with it. Seems like it should be good. Now, as you can tell, we're making a bit of a mess in here. So, plan is put these wheels on these one-off penny axles. And I got some rollies I stole from Mer, so they're mine now, much like this chop saw. Thanks, Mer. Appreciate the early birthday or late Christmas gift. However you want to, use it this year is fine. So here's my plan. We have that Opel. I want to bring that in. I want to see what that's all about. Now, a lot of people, I'm working on too many things. You should try being in my brain. It's just nonstop. We're waiting on parts. I'm figuring things out and working a little bit here and there. But you know what? By come springtime, we're gonna have a bunch of hot rods on the road. This one, I want to put on its wheels, drop it down. The next step will be bolting the body on more properly than just these clamps, getting the doors opening and closing. Upcoming video. But once we get the body all dialed together, it's where it's gonna be. The motor trans are in there. We're all fine. Oh, I do gotta make a trans cross member real quick, or a strap. See, it's like being in my brain here. We're gonna be doing bodywork to it, cutting fiberglass, doing all sorts of stuff, which A is ugly, B is boring, and C, I don't enjoy it, but it's a necessary evil, making this thing look cooler. I think we're getting there day by day, but that's the plan with this. While I'm picking away at that, I want to have the Opel in. We do got to set up that motor and trans I have. I got to get that in there, see what I need for that, see what I need for parts. Opel stuff's a little difficult to find, not the end of the world, but I want to make sure I can get those parts going, because it's a really complete car. Needs a drive line and a once over, and it should be like driving. So I want to get that going. Another thing, if we can fit 2 smaller cars in here and work on them within reason, old half-ass been giving me a hard time about not working on that Model A. So I got a 31 Model A coupe. I'd like to build that as well. Probably can't be much bigger than one of these. Now on the end wall, I took some stuff off. We had this junk motor. Unfortunately, it's going to go outside. It's got a bunch of stuck valves. We had a brake and an engine crane. In turn, we can have a C-ring. So it's on rollers. We can push it off to the edge, and I can always bring it back. It should fit between here and the sandblaster and stick out no further than that table. This thing is 6 feet wide, 13 feet long. Not a very big car, so if we can get over there, rearrange. I got the straight 6 that was in the Biscayne. I've tried to sell it, tried to trade it. No one's really been interested in it. It's a good running drive motor, so I'm probably going to keep it, but it's going to go under a tarp outside for the time being, which I hate doing, but I can't justify having 2 motors in this garage that generates content, money, cars, when I need the room. So if I have 2 cars in here versus 2 dead motors in 1 car, until I change my mind tomorrow, I put it all back. So next time you see this, hopefully I'll be dropping it down, we'll be pushing it over. I'll do a little cleanup. We'll finish off the video by dragging in that Opel. Look at that off in the corner. It kind of looks like it's just being left for nothing. I put some boxes in there and kind of did a little bit of just cleaning up in here, but look at all the space we have. Enough for one Danielle. I pushed this thing back. The Opel's gonna go right in the center. We're gonna try and get that motor over here. That's all be in the next video, but don't worry, this isn't going away. And I mean, let's be honest, everyone wants to see one more project. One more project. All right. We're going to end this by dragging the Opel in, letting it thaw out, and go from there. So thanks again to the Penny Boys for those axles. And, man, 4-link for dummies for, I think that kit was 250 bucks. So if I can do it. That being said, it hasn't worked yet, but it looks cool. So you should go there by yourself. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel. It'll be a huge favor. It really makes a world of difference. Costs nothing. And leave a comment. Enjoy the tripod as we try and drag. We're going to try and drag this Opel in. It's been frozen. We haven't moved it since it snowed. It'll be fine.
So, all that is in my car. That's
things happen. Somebody forgot to put the window up.
Who?
Well, in my defense, we both didn't check. Subscribe so Danny gets a new interior.